Good evening, everyone. I'm going to call this public hearing to order for May the 23rd, 2018. The purpose of this hearing is to provide information to the public about the financial situation of the town of the Pas and assist the public to understand how tax dollars are being spent. This is an opportunity for public participation and input into the town's short and long-term goals. And with that, I will introduce Graham Collar, who's our controller, and turn it over to him. Graham.
Do both.
There are copies of the financial plan here, as well as the presentation itself. You can grab a copy if you don't have a copy already. There should be enough for everyone. If there isn't, some people might have to cuddle. Just 1 second. Oops. Wasn't too bad even with the lights on. Okay, so welcome to our financial plan presentation for 2018. I'm Graham Kaler, I'm the controller. If you have any questions, by all means interrupt me, I don't mind, and I'll try and answer them as best I can. So a bit of a summary here of what we're going to talk about today. We usually go through how assessment works, just to give an idea to anybody who's a little bit confused about the process. In 2018, we had a few new things coming that we wanted to bring to everyone's attention. There was a decrease overall on assessment. I'll go through more detail of these. There's a slide for each. So policing costs have gone up. There was some presentation changes to the financial plan itself. So if you're looking at year-to-year numbers, sometimes they look a little different. There was a new union agreement signed in 2017 and another one in 2018. We had some deficits from prior years that we're looking to recover as part of our tax. We had a land development initiative where we sold a bunch of surplus lots that just closed up in 2018. The Rose Avenue project that you guys have seen should be done this year in the summer. In terms of the financial strategy for 2018, I'll do a little bit of an overview. We'll talk about how the tax dollars collected from individuals get split out into what departments, where your money goes. We'll talk about the debentures, the reserves, the transportation budget, which is always a little bit more interesting to people. We made some changes to the grants, which will probably be of interest as well. We're looking at some surplus equipment sales, continuing with our lot sales in 2018 that the town has in inventory, our capital plan and what we're going to be doing in 2018, and then major capital projects in the future. So, get this ball rolling here. We got assessment mill rate and property taxes, and how does this work in calculating the taxes I pay as an individual. So assessments, as everyone is aware, this is something that is not done out of the town of the Pas. This is done by the provincial government. There's a branch that comes in that gives your property a value. Should be based on market value, but if it's not sold recently, sometimes they come and do their best estimate. So anybody who has questions about their actual assessment value, that's something you would take up with the assessment branch. One thing that is important here to take away is in 2018 we saw a decline in our assessment for the community as a whole. So in 2018, 192 million total assessment, which is $5 million less than last year. Now, how that affects your taxes is all other things being equal, because the tax base is less, everybody pays a little more. So here's a little bit of a breakdown of where our mill rate comes from. So there's your budgeted expenses for the year for the town as a whole. We do have some other revenues outside of taxes that come in, user fees, fines, stuff like that. The debentures get split out because we collect the debentures separately from the large mill rate. And then you've got your total cost to taxpayers being set up as your property tax bill. Total assessment, as I said, 192 million. So we get our new general mill rate, 31.7. So. There's a bit of a comparison from year to year here. So what I did in 2018 was I tried to give a little more of a breakdown of how things were being split out. Historically, reserves have been built into that large number, which I didn't like. I like to, and actually the way the financial plan is made, the template comes in a way that they like you to show it separately. So I did that this year just to show where the breakdown is. So we did drop in our at-large mill rate about 1.6% or 1.6 mils. However, we do have the reserves broke out separately, so there is a bit of an increase there when you look at the two numbers together. The deficit recovery, this is something we'll talk about a little later, but we ran deficits in a couple of the prior years, which unfortunately then we would draw against reserve money to pay for in the year, and something we need to look at recovering. So. Absolutely.
Under Kelsey School Division, that shows 0.21 as a change. Just so there's no misunderstanding, the school division had a 0% special requirement for the last 2 years. It's the government that takes the special levy amounts and decides how it's going to apportion it between the RM of Kelsey and the town. And then they ask the school division to pass the news on to the town. But we don't make that decision. It's a government decision. Last year, the town got a decrease and the RM got an increase, and this year's flipped. And
keep in mind, again, we've got a declining assessment base, so another thing where you're just going to see increases across the board. So, there was a drop in both the Kelsey School Division and provincial overall ask for the year, but again, the effect doesn't always show that when you're looking at the mills. So. But you know, the be-all, end-all here is for residential property, on every $100,000 of assessment you have, you pay about $91 more. So it's not a huge change, but it is a change. The commercial, just a little bit less than that. So here I was trying to give a little more detail in the change. So there was the $5 million of change, which is about 2.5%. So we do see an increase in our mills this year, but about 1.26 of the 2.5 mills is actually just based on assessment alone. So that's the majority of it is in fact something that was out of our control. So the policing costs was another hot item, and I know there's been meetings about this recently in the past. The policing costs continue to go up. So we see again an increase of about $161,000 for next year. This is a pretty big portion of our budget, and a little bit later on I have a graphic showing how the breakout and a pie chart just showing how this would be divided for each individual as you contribute. But it's definitely a big portion of the pie. So this is something that's outside of our control as well. Again, just like the way the government decides with the school division, they mandate the rates. We're set on a 25 or a 30-year agreement, and unfortunately it doesn't leave us a lot of room to lobby. This is a little bit small to see. So one of the things that I did change this year, and it probably should have been changed last year as well, was the way we were treating KRC and wellness on our statements. Historically, we've treated them as a grant, and that was in fact correct treatment back when they were a separate entity. In a recent year, and I think 17 would have been the first year, they were dissolved as a separate entity and reintegrated into the town. So that means on our statements we now have to show them as gross, including all their revenues and all their expenditures. So it looks a little bit wonky when you look at the statements, because all of a sudden the cost doubles, but in fact there's $1 million of revenue there as well. So here I have the net, and it's $4,000 different. Just to give everybody an idea, it's not a huge change. When you factor in stuff like the increases in wages due to the union agreements, it's not a real big change at all. So. The other thing that we changed, and I mentioned it a little bit there, was on Schedule 8, where we show the breakout of how your taxes and mill rates are calculated. I tried to give you a little more detail there. The reserves are broken out. And more information is better, more clarity. So I did mention the union agreements. We did sign a new agreement with CUPE, which is our biggest union, October 10, 2017. And there's the increases in rates over the next 3 years. They're pretty nominal. So. I had also mentioned the deficit recovery. So we had two deficits, well, two types of deficits to recover. We had an operating deficit for 2015. We had a surplus in 16, and the net of that is a smaller deficit. So typically what the government lets you do is it lets you do a few options here to try and recover this money. If you have surplus in place, you can offset that there. You can reduce reserves in place if available, or you can look to recover it from your tax base. So in our case, we don't have those surpluses from from old years. The reserves are lower than we'd like them to be, especially with the lagoon project coming up, the waste disposal site needing to be closed down or replaced. So we're looking at recovering this over a 3-year period. So the effect is pretty nominal on the individual taxpayer, but there is an effect. The utility fund deficit, again, is a little different. The utility fund runs kind of as a side on the town. It doesn't affect the operating, but the conditions are similar. PUB actually requires us to recover any deficits we incur. Again, you can go against reserves if you have them available. You can recover from old surpluses, neither of which we have available, so we're looking at recoveries. So how this affects you is not on your taxes, but your utility rates will be going up for a short term. So as we said, we had a sale of surplus lots. I'm sure everybody saw it in the news. The lake lots all sold. There was 21 lake lots that were sold, 9 Wood Acres lots, of which we have 1 remaining. And there was 3 other properties throughout the community that were sold as well. We still have a number of properties, and we will be looking at clearing them out. This is especially important with regards to the special levy if we do go ahead. Every lot that the town owns potentially has a negative effect on us for the special levy with those minimum fees. So as we clear out lots, that puts us in a better position financially and improves our tax base as well. So can't pay ourselves for owning lots. The Rose Avenue, again, I think the work is, I just saw Sam meeting him today, so I think the work is about to get started again, and hopefully we'll see that done right away. It's a pretty big project for us. Okay, so 2018, the overview here. So we had a number of meetings with council, myself, CAO, assistant CAO, the supervisors and managers of the departments. We made a lot of effort to try and bring the expenses down, try and bring the demand down on the individual taxpayers. We made some reductions in areas that previously weren't reduced before and tried to minimize the effect of the decrease in assessment as much as possible. We'll go through that in a little more detail in the coming slides. So we also wanted to note that we've been continuing in our strategy to try and reduce our overhead costs and some of our fixed costs. One thing that Councillor Gibb likes to bring up is our old propane heater in this building. It's a big old building and a big old heater, and we're looking at efficiency and doing some upgrades there. But similar things of that nature. And just as an overall, I mean, you know, there's a lot of old infrastructure in this town. Water lines, sewer lines, streets. I'm sure you're aware of the condition of a lot of these pieces of equipment. I don't think we're unique in terms of other communities. I think it's a common problem across the board, but there is a significant upcoming burden to replace a lot of this stuff. And as it fails, the costs can be enormous. So we're going to continue to try and replace the worst first and triage our way back. But there is some significant things coming down the pipe. So this is hard to see, and I don't know if everyone has a copy of it in front of you. It'll be a little bit easier to see. So what I tried to do here was, in the past we had looked at where the expenses fell as a whole, but you know, what I tried to do here was, as an individual taxpayer, when you back out the revenues associated with different departments, what are you paying for? So what I did here was, for each individual and each dollar they put in, this is how the breakdown of that dollar goes. So when you pay your property taxes, 2018, 36% goes to school levies, 14% goes to general government and operation of our infrastructure, transportation, I can even see it. Public Works is transportation, 9.46%. The police, 19%. So, you know, oftentimes we get a hard time for the amount of property tax we do charge. However, when you look at school levies and police aside, I mean, that's over 50% of what we collect, and that none of that money goes back into the town. So, and I thought this would be a good descriptor of where your money's going. Sometimes people don't get the whole picture when they're looking at where our operating costs are. So one example I like to use is the airport. Everybody thinks the airport costs us money. In fact, they collect more fees than they expend. So on their own, they don't cost the taxpayer anything. So looking at the debentures, as you know, we had a number of debentures in previous years, the Wood Acres development, the Winton Pool upgrades, the Wellness Center, and the multiplex. These are the four we still have. At the end of, one ends in 2019, that's the Wood Acres, so we've just got this year and next year, and then hopefully that'll free up some money for our operating budget. And then the rest, 2025, 2027. So. One thing I wanted to point out with this is, you know, 2019 we're looking at clearing the Wood Acres. However, likely we're going to be looking at debt financing for the lagoon upgrade, which is going to be a significant cost. So here is a breakdown of the reserves and our contributions this year. So this is, there's a few types of reserves here, first of all. So there's reserves that are funded from your tax dollars. There's reserves that are funded through other revenues, monies we get from the government, monies we get from individual fees in some cases. And there's the third type, which comes from the utilities. So they provide their own budget based on fees collected as well. So in the 2018 budget, we have actually cut down on our reserves, which was a hard sell because we didn't want to overburden taxpayers this year. But in reality, with some of the big projects like the lagoon and the dump, we should be putting more away than we are. But the compromise this year was, because we're already seeing a gain or an increase, we wanted to try and make that as minimal as possible. So transportation services. Again, sometimes there's confusion and people think that we spend a big chunk of the budget on public works alone. In that transportation services line from the page 1 summary, we also include the airport. And that's almost half of what we spend there. So when you take away the airport expenditures, there's not as big of a piece of the pie there. So just wanted to kind of put that out there and make it a little more clear where that money goes. So a $1.27 million budget is what Public Works runs on, or is planning on running on in 2018, which is very similar. It's actually a little bit less than 17. So. And then I just wanted to show again, because sometimes the numbers are a little bit confusing here, the airport, again, in a net positive position for 17 budget and 18 budget. So it's not costing the town any money. It's not planned to cost the town any money, whether it does in fact. The grants was another area that we spent a lot of time discussing over. There was historically a number of grants given out to community organizations. The biggest one, obviously, CKAPI. That one is a 3-year agreement. We're on year 2. 1 more year to go after this. The change this year is, looks like more, but it's just based on the change in assessment, because we just reinvest or repay the amount that they pay for their at-large taxes. The Recycle Center, we looked at their per capita based on the agreement we have, so that came down a little bit as the town's population decreases relative to OCN and RM. The CDC, we actually had cut the CDC's budget completely this year because they had some excess funds from prior years. And the DMC had arranged a cost share agreement on the employee to split an employee cost. So that's what you're seeing there, the 46.5 as compared to the 82 the year before. Obviously, there's a number of programs that were cut this year, the Arts Council, the Chaplaincy, the Blizzard. There's some nominal ones as well. Again, the intent is to just focus more on deliverables that the town provides as opposed to funding outside organizations. So again, as part of our internal review process, we had looked at some of our surplus equipment. We do have a few pieces of equipment that have been retired or aren't in active use anymore. We're looking at clearing some of that out to generate a little bit of revenue. And again, we've started inventorying a lot of our lots, whatever's left, and there has been a number of half lots, which historically we haven't had available for development, and we're looking at making some changes to our building code so that we can do that. Here is a summary of some of the bigger items going through capital in 2018. So as everyone's aware, the La Rose Avenue project, it's probably going to cost us another $1.2 million. Now, $800,000 of that is covered by provincial and federal grants. So the actual cost to us as a community is only $400,000. Really a good deal for us to have those types of grant funding, a third. That's a fantastic way for us to do these upgrades when they're available. We talked a little bit about the boiler upgrade, so we're looking at making a change for the boiler in the Civic Center, which will hopefully save us significant operating funds in the future. We're paying for propane now. Some time ago, you may remember we had a meeting about the rink, where there was some problems with the piping. We were having leaks. We had it down for repairs, so we had budgeted an amount in here based on what the previous maintenance director had suggested. So we're going to be looking at doing that repair. There may be some other options, but it's on there. We'd like to maintain that in case we have to. There was some smaller equipment as well. A couple of trucks that were older, a loader that's long since should have been retired, and some other infrastructure. So that's not the whole list, but those are the major items. So there is a full detailed list in the financial plan on page 13 if you're interested. That one belongs to me, sorry. So finally, looking forward at the big things coming down the pipe, we do have, again, a full list of what we have planned for the next 5 years, or what we hope to accomplish in the next 5 years for capital. I think we have a 15-year plan now, actually, that we've been working on. But this is the major stuff coming down the pipe. Lagoon upgrade, again, we're behind on this. We need to get this done soon. The waste disposal site, again, the deal isn't done, but this is what we're estimating the cost to be. There is some upgrades as well to streets that we were looking at, some of the more aged out ones that will hopefully save us water, sewer costs, and try and improve some of the oldest infrastructure in town. That is the presentation, and this would be a good time if you guys have any questions.
So at this point then, we would open the floor to questions. Sure, Jan, yeah, absolutely.
Hi, I'm Jan McDonald, and I'm the treasurer for the PA Arts Council. So on May the 2nd, 2018, the PA Arts Council received a letter from Graham, controller for the town of the PA, stating the Arts Council would not receive their annual grant of $4,000 from the town. On behalf of the PA Arts Council, I would like to appeal this decision. The PA Arts Council has received an annual grant from the town of the PA since before our incorporation of 1981. I understand the town is experiencing budget restraint. However, how can the town justify cutting our grant, totally cutting it? I think most departments have experienced budget cuts of 10% last year. In addition, the Arts Council receives funding from the province through sports, culture, and heritage, which matches funding received from municipalities. If we do not receive our annual grant from the town, it will mean a total loss of $8,000 for the Arts Council. Each year, the Arts Council works to bring arts and culture to our community with one half-time coordinator and a volunteer board. We manage to do this without a facility. We promote our events, plus the work of our member groups. Advertising the events alone last year cost us $6,313. Groups of the Arts Council are the Arts Guild, Aurora, Carrot Valley Community Club, Christchurch Concert Group, Home Roots, KSD Band Boosters, MBCI Arts Club, Sam Weller Museum, Some Crafty Chicks, Storytellers Film Festival, the PA Community Choir, the PA Music and Fine Arts Festival, the PA Regional Library, the PA Square Dancers, and Theatre 53. We need the continued support of the town of the PA to keep the arts alive in our community. Please consider reinstating our annual grant for 2018.
Thank you. Andrew, did you?
I'm just support.
I have
Yes.
two questions.
Yes.
So obviously money is tight.
Yes.
Is there something the town could do as sort of an in-kind contribution that would allow you to give that to the province? Like I know for Trappers Festival, for example, we're kind of the same way. We need the support from the municipality or we don't get the provincial grant. And they provide us in-kind support as opposed to monetary support, which the province does accept as a contribution from the municipality, which allows us to get our annual grant. And then my second question would be is if you applied to the Destination Marketing Committee for a grant for the $4,000, would the provincial government consider that as a contribution from the town since it's a committee of council?
So we do receive gift in kind from the town of the Pas, and that does count towards our grant also. So the province does match that, yes. And from the Destination Marketing Fund, yes, that would you know, go towards grant, applies to grant from the town of the Pas.
Because the Destination Marketing Committee has another intake date on July the 15th, so I'm sure that there are activities and events that you do with the Arts Council that would match the criteria for the Destination Marketing Committee. So just a thought, again, it's another kind of revenue stream that doesn't come from the taxpayer, so it doesn't impact the mill rate, but it's a way for you to still get your grant and be able to get your matching funding.
We did, is this the same one that we applied last year? I'm sure it is, for our arts and craft sale, and it's for when people come from out of town and the expenses and that was the one?
Yeah,
the same, that's it, yeah. So
yeah.
we did get $500 last year.
So what
well, in this fiscal year.
Right, so what I'm thinking is that though, if you can apply again, as long as you completed your final report, which I remember receiving.
Right.
So you can apply multiple times within a fiscal year. So my recommendation would be to apply again and apply for the $4,000 that you usually get for the town. It can't go towards operating costs when it comes from the Destination Marketing Committee, but again, like, I don't know if there's a way where, you know, you could allocate other funds towards operating costs and then use that for some of your events and promotion and that sort of thing, but that's just a suggestion.
Okay, because I remember, like, for the arts and crafts sale, that it was based on I think it was advertising our event, and then people coming from out of town. So a lot of our events are, you know, locals. So I'm not sure if it would fit, but we could try.
But if you're bringing in performers and they're accessing, like if you're using our local facilities and they're staying in the hotels overnight and that sort of stuff, and there's the potential for your events to bring in spin-off events, those are all criteria that fit within the Destination Marketing.
I could see that it happening for, you know, a small amount of the $4,000, but I can't see, because a lot of what we promote are local events, you know, and local performers, local artists. So, but I could see applying for, you know, parts, you know, maybe we could get another $500, but I can't see it being the whole, I can't see $4,000 fitting into that criteria, into your criteria. Are there any other questions?
There's also the Community Renewal Corporation as well. They have a small grants program where you can apply for up to $5,000.
Yes, we have applied for, when we do culture days, we get a grant from Canadian Heritage. Like, we try and get as many grants as we can from wherever, and from Canadian Heritage, that I think we got just about $6,000 last year. And then we, from the Pas Community Renewal Corporation, we got another $3 because it cost us over $10,000 to do culture days. And most of that is promoting our local groups. Are there any other questions?
Jan, did you say that you spent almost $6,000 in advertising last year?
Yes.
So, I mean, that might be another, along the lines of what Crystal was talking about, right? So if you are able to rework your financial plan and your own structure of how you spread those costs across your organization, those are costs that fit the bill and would qualify under the Destination Marketing Committee as costs that you can ask for. I mean, it likely means that you have to be well organized in terms of all of your events for the year might need to go in as a single application at one time, as opposed to doing multiple ones for $500 at a time when we're going to do this event. Or if the Arts Council supports the Home Roots concerts, for example, that's an organization coming in, or groups that are coming in to perform, they qualify. You could probably collapse all of that into one application and make it of a noteworthy amount, and then you end up moving these costs around within the framework so that you can find $4,000 at the Destination Marketing Committee. I mean, I'll be honest, I mean, my gut says I don't see how we're going to be able to do this. I really don't. And it's not just, understand that it's not about, for me anyway, it's not about whether or not we see value in the arts or value in the Arts Council or the effort of the Arts Council. It's not a reflection of whether or not we think that money is is being used appropriately. It's just a case of, it's just not there. I mean, and it's not just you guys. So, I mean, it's difficult. And certainly on a personal level, if you would like assistance with looking at books and seeing how, whether or not we can help with those things. I sit on the library board, I sit on the recycling center. We do this all the time. It's all about figuring out ways to draw more from the places that you can when you know that somebody else has nothing to give. So can offer personal support for it, but I don't know that at this table I'm able to offer support for the 4,000. I mean, believe me when I say that we've agonized over every penny for this whole thing. So
it's just that this is in our fiscal year 2018. Our year ends August 31st. So we were counting in this fiscal year that this $4,000 would be there. So for our next fiscal year, like starting in September, we can try and, to maybe access more of the destination marketing. And, but like I said, a lot of our events are local, local events, like we do have the home roots, and those are people coming from out of town. But for a lot of our concerts and events that go on there, we're supporting our local artists and
it's going to extend to all those member groups that we support. So it's not just the council taking a loss, it's every one of those groups on that, in that letter she just wrote.
So I hear you, but I think that there is more to be captured at the Destination Marketing Committee Fund if you understand better how to structure your application so that those events qualify for additional funding. There's nothing subversive about that. That's just simply the case. If those events like the Home Roots concert, those performers are coming from away, but local performers that are where you're having an event being put off, if there's a chance that somebody from Moose Lake or Swan River or Flin Flon is going to come to see that, then it's drawing somebody in, and that's where the critical component lies in terms of being able to access funding from the Destination Marketing Committee. The fact that it's a local group or local performers doesn't really matter to the Destination Marketing Committee application in terms of, it matters in terms of the expense you're going to incur, but in terms of its ability to qualify expenses such as advertising, if you're sending flyers out to Flin Flon for the performance, then maybe there's opportunity to capture more there.
And we do have a destination marketing coordinator. So her name is Kimberly Valentine, and she works in the Visitor Information Center. Her job is to help people with filling out grant applications and answering questions. So there's definitely a staff person who would be able to assist you with those sorts of things that Andrew's talking about, finding ways to kind of make your expenses fit into the mold or the criteria of the Destination Marketing Fund. And I think some of them definitely do fit the criteria. It's all about promoting the Paw as a desirable tourist place, and arts and culture is very important to promote your community. So I think that, there's definitely room for it to fit the criteria. And again, we have a staff person that's her job, that's what she's there for, is to help with your questions and to help fill out the grant application and that sort of thing. So,
well, that's something we'll definitely try. And but like I said, we still leaves us $4,000 short for this year because we're wrapping up for this year, and we don't have many other events going on during the summer. So that will just put us that far behind. But definitely we could try the destination marketing. We could try and access more for the upcoming years. So, any other questions?
Okay. Thanks, Jen.
Okay.
Yeah. James.
You've cut to the chase, so I'm not sure what I'm going to add to this, but I'll prepare a little bit. James Dean, resident of the Paw. James Dean, resident of the Paw. I guess tonight I got my artist hat on. Jan spoke wisely about our situation. I was just going to add a little bit of iceberg to this. Obviously, the iceberg on top is what I'll speak to, which is a lot smaller than what's underneath the iceberg, which is community, which is the arts. I could speak for hours on it, and I'm sure you all could too. But thanks for letting me speak. I like democracy. The arts in the Paw is certainly a legacy. It's a part of our community. It makes up many things, as you all know. Visual arts, theater, poetry, creativity, music, all aspects of what the community has. A few years ago, we had a committee trying to bring a hardcore facility to the PA. We worked for over a year to bring a building to the PA that we could call the Arts Building. Because right now, when anything that goes on in the PA, we are scattered. The theater uses basements of churches, we use halls, we use rooms, we use everything we can get together to come together, to practice, to perform, to create, to paint, to sing, and we wanted to bring a facility together. So that's beyond us now. But one of the components, there's many components in that. One of the components is that anybody moving to the PA has the opportunity to bring arts into their family. I'm not going to move to the PA. I'm a trumpet player. There's no trumpet things I'm going to be able to perform in the PA, so I'm not moving to the PA. Sports, athletics, hockey, awesome, but we wanted that building to be part of that, so that it rounded off people. So that even though the father wanted to come, he was a hunter and a fisherman, the wife wouldn't come because she wanted her kids to take ukulele lessons or whatever. So I want to just mention that. The opportunity to create, to express, and perform is part of the people here in the PA. Our economy, people move here, as I mentioned, art is often what they wish to partake in through their family, through their children, through music, through art lessons, through dance lessons while they're living here. My son is an artist. He's got his degree now. He's going to be a teacher. It was spawned in the PA. It was spawned by like-minded people. It was spawned by artists and musicians and people that make up the PA and still are here today, and some have moved on. But he's now continuing that legacy. So when he says where he's from, he's proud to say he's from the PA. And he does have his artistic flavor that will go with him wherever he came, that came from this community. So again, linking the importance of arts to our community. When you came here tonight, you probably had music on, or you were sitting at a restaurant earlier this week looking at the art, photography that's in a lot of the businesses that you all work in or are part of. The murals that were part of the beautification process. Some beautiful ones just went up last year. They're incredible. They haven't been vandalized to any degree, which again speaks to the significance of arts in making the PA beautiful, wonderful, home, whatever you want to call it. So they were inspired by artists and inspired by each other, all the melting group of people that call the PA home from all across the country. They bring their artist abilities here and they mentor, they teach, they open up and showcase and make the town worth that much more living in, to get up in the morning and plan for that event, as Jan has spoken about. As you know, I just got done reading a book of wars have been based on stealing of art. I just got done reading a book about it, and we know that they go back centuries and the value of it. So anyone that's created those type of arts is, in our own way, created our own little habitat for those valuables coming from the PA. When they find out I'm from the PA, when I put stuff in Winnipeg, there's an aura about being from the north. I don't know what it is. And it's kind of cool. So, just like history, we know that arts crosses many barriers of languages and races and cultures. I'm not going to speak any longer than that. We know the significance of it. And I just hope that, I heard what you said with Jan and stuff, we're going to try to do what we can, but I hope that you use and think of our history of the PA past and our future generations to come in enabling and trying to keep that little bit of a spark alive with what we want and what we need to make it go for the many people that dedicate themselves to the art here in the community. So I'll stop there and thank you for letting me speak.
Any comments from the council?
Thanks.
Thank you, James. Anybody else? Bob?
No, go ahead.
That's okay.
Me first after you. Bob Buckler. I'm not speaking against this budget. The more general comments of past, present, and current budgets. One thing worries me, actually. You're looking at it, it's $28,000 in the near future for a garbage dump and sewage lagoon. There's almost nothing going into the reserve fund towards that. Now there's $67,000 for the waste disposal. That's peanuts compared to $10 million, $18 million. I really think there should be a huge sum more than that when those projects are known to be required within not too far down the road. I don't know of any reason to be optimistic about the future that the town will be rolling in money in hunky-dory 5 years from now. We're going to end up borrowing a pile of money at interest rates and so on. I fully understand, well, kind of a general comment. Right across Canada, from municipal to provincial to federal, every taxpayer voter screams, we want this and this and this, but don't raise our taxes. So every politician for all those three levels runs on the promise, you know, vote for me, I won't raise taxes, but I'll give you all you want, sort of. That can't occur. And I think very quickly, people are going to have to realize you want things, you got to pay for it. I know the taxes are very high in this town, but still, I don't think it's realistic to go on hope. And well, we look for grants somewhere because grants come out of the same pocket. There's only us taxpayers in Canada. So I guess what I'm speaking about here, I hope in the future, and there's an upcoming election, that politicians have the fortitude to tell the voters that, look, we can't go on promising what you want. You want that, you're going to have to pay for it. That's the bottom line, sort of. Other than that, like this current budget, I can support. Many things I don't disagree with, but I think the justification given is sufficient, so that's about all I have to say.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, thanks, Bob.
Ivan Young, 70 Guymer Crescent, got a question about electric boiler upgrade. Is it an electric boiler and you're upgrading to another electric boiler? It's a propane boiler. And is there a study to determine the cost per BTU, what you're going to save?
We do. We have a really detailed study was done by an engineering firm last year. So if you want to see it, you're welcome to.
I definitely would like to see it because I know what energy costs are going to do in the next 7 years. And if you're just changing the source of fuel because, like I hear in every council meeting, you get a big propane bill. I've looked at some of your propane bills. There was some study done, and I don't know what happened in the water treatment plant, but in 2014, your propane in the water treatment plant doubled, and it's been doubled ever since. So there is some major change in that. Anyway, I would like to see the documents because, I mean, you're talking $175,000. So there's got to be a return on investment. Just because you get a high bill, it's got to be broke down to cost per BTU because you're going to use the same amount of BTUs. I don't care what the source of energy is, unless you insulate, better windows, or do something different. Secondly is, I understand the funding is cut to the chaplaincy, which you can understand, but in watching town council for the last couple of years, you react to things on a momentary basis. Craft papers, going to shut down. All of a sudden you find money. Another example, OCN blizzards. Last year, just like that you found, well, we'll give them the wellness center. I mean, things are tough, but stop giving things away. These lakefront lots, the word on the street, you probably left $50,000 to $100,000 on the table. If you would have had an auction sale, starting at a reserve bid of $1,200 so you could pay an auctioneer, you would probably have sold just as many lots, and some of them you would have sold for $1,200, but some you would have sold for $10,000. So, I don't know, it's tough times, and just spend your money wisely because, I don't know, it seems like you need something right away, we'll go into the reserve. And I don't know all the thoughts behind it, just $17,000 last council meeting for a clear diesel tank. Manitoba Highways, Manitoba Hydro, they buy their fuel from the gas plants, the gas stations. Does the town need $17,000 for a clear diesel tank? I don't know what the savings are, but anyway, that's my concern.
Oh, you're the mailman.
Thank you.
So, you and Graham will be talking, though?
Yeah.
Okay, good, okay.
I just
James.
got the back of that page. You mentioned in-kind from the town to the arts. Would it and can it include the use of our sign or a sign to promote the arts in the PA? I know there's been lots of stuff on the signs in town. We went out and bought one a year ago for $1,000 or more and can't use it. So for social media being good, we know that, but for an age population, sign is as good as Facebook for some. So I know it's a loaded question because I know you got stuff on the books for your signs in town, but it would be helpful if we could promote that, and also the whole issue about public property, where if we could locate it on public property type of thing versus private. Is there ways that we can get a sign going also to help from the town? That would be an in-kind from the town to promote the arts. Thanks.
Thought, yeah. Anyone else? All right then. Oh, I'm sorry, Lynn.
Arlene Kubelka, Oaken Avenue. I just have a comment. I don't think I can approve or disapprove of the budget. I don't know where our priorities lie as a town, as a council. I find it very difficult sometimes to watch a meeting and watch one councillor say, I really like this or I like this and I'll vote yes. And I'll watch another councillor and say, well, I have to vote nay because. And sometimes I think it's maybe personal councillors' opinions. And sometimes I don't know if it's an opinion, I'm wearing a councillor's hat and I have to be responsible and vote this way. And sometimes I don't know what I'm watching because I don't see anything publicly stated of what our town's priorities are. And I know there are a whole bunch of priorities. We all want to see as taxpayers lower taxes, but what do we prioritize as a town? Is infrastructure the most important? And then subdivided is, like our La Rose project was obviously important, and now we're hearing the lagoon is important, and other things are up there with infrastructure, but what are the most important? And then we have our street population is an important issue for safety and otherwise, but where is that? What is the priority to that? Because then we see that we have the chaplaincy program is being cut, but was that a good cut? Is it a good cut in order of our priorities? And then there's other priorities out there too. So then when we see the council voting no to something, does that align with our priorities? And should we be up in arms in that, or does that align with the priorities that we've identified? And we don't see anything publicly about what those priorities are. And I don't doubt that every decision you make, there's a lot of homework gone into it. There's been a lot of backroom discussion about it in your council of the whole meetings and in the other meetings that you have that aren't public. So, you know, and Graham said there's a big study done in the boiler project. It wasn't just a decision that was made. So there's a lot of work that goes into your decisions. We don't see that, but we also don't see the priorities as a public. So can I say this budget is good or not? I don't know. I don't know if you've aligned with your priorities. I don't know even if there are priorities. I know I haven't done a survey as a person of the public in years. I don't know if I ever remember doing one. So do you know what the public wants besides lower taxes? That's just my comment. I know Councillor Gibb on social media presented a really good analogy with his pie, but do we even know what flavor of pie we want? You know, what do we know? I can't say if you're buying the right pie or doing the right thing with the pie, because I don't know what kind of pie we want. So that's just my comment.
Those are great comments. Thank you very much. All right, anyone else? All right, then I will, sorry.
Can I just make a comment? I know we've brought this up before about the Power Smart grants. And as far as the grants go, the one I struggled with the most, and I think I can speak for most of us, which doesn't happen too often, was the decision of cutting the chaplaincy grant. So whether there's any Power Smart money, whether it's $500, $1,000, $50, I'm not suggesting we change the budget at all, because I know this is a lot of work and this is great work. But if something does come in from the Power Smart funding, we just apply it to the chaplaincy.
Has the Power Smart rebate been accounted for within the budget? It's pretty minuscule,
It's
right?
zero, right? We budgeted
Zero
zero.
right now. I mean, it's going to be based on projects that we complete, correct?
Right. In the budget, the rebate is zero,
Correct.
so money that might come in could be surplus to the
Again,
budget.
The basis of this budget is to try to give us a tax number. If additional revenue comes in, you can make additional decisions based on that
Right.
as they go.
And we are looking for.
We are looking, yes. There are, I can't make any promises, but there are some opportunities that may present themselves for us to do something about funding the chaplaincy program. I can't see us getting anywhere near 20,000, but some is better than none. And so we just, it's not easy, folks. You know, yes, no, it's not easy. You know, while we have, in this budget, have removed some grants, I hope we've made it clear tonight that we are prepared to work very hard with you to help replace that. And that's where we're at. Okay? Any other comments? All right, I'll adjourn the hearing then. Thank you. Pardon me?
I just had a quick question.
Sure, Karen.
Sorry. Carrie Atkinson, 36 Watts. I walked in just prior to 6:30. The sign on the door says 6:30, and also on social media stated 6:30. So I'm kind of confused as to what time everyone started.
Public hearing was 6. 6:30 is the special meeting. Public hearing and special meeting are two different things.
Okay.
We have a special meeting at 6, well,
I feel like I didn't see the 6 o'clock anywhere. Okay.
Paper, it's advertised.
Yeah.
And I think it was just confusing.
Yep.
I just go off the times on my agendas that I get, so
I usually do too, but then literally like 20 people today told me like, no, the meeting's at 6:30, and then they're like, that's what the thing says, so I go to the town of the paw thing and I look, and I'm like, oh yeah, it does say 6:30, I'm like, oh, maybe I find
The special meeting, but
special
not the
meeting. I know, it was a little
public
bit confusing though, yeah. So I'm like, oh, got time to cook supper when I get home today.
all right, I will now adjourn the public hearing.